Yes, folks, it's Tales from the Jails with John G. Sutton. Thank you very much for watching this channel. Do please like and subscribe. There's a link down there to my new book, which is on Amazon, HMP Manchester Prison Officer, Part 3. And for all those of you who have been listening to the audio books of volumes 1 and 2, the audio copy will be out before the end of this month, so I am reliably advised by my publisher, Sean Atwood. I want to talk today about a strange case. You see, I've been asked, specifically asked of my own request, was to talk about paranormal, strange paranormal activities and visions I've had during my times working in the prison system, which were numerous. And I know a lot of people say, that's absolute bollocks, I've heard enough about that. And please, I'm not trying to convince anybody as to what I see. It is what I see, and I'm just telling you my truth, yeah? I mean, there are people who talk about an invisible man in the sky. I mean, you've only got loads of buildings all around the country, and on a Sunday mornings, people go in and talk to this invisible man in the sky. So if I say that I've seen apparitions in various institutions of prisons, etc., how much more plausible is that? I mean, I can only give you what I see and what I hear, you know, as I have done. And I will be talking about the apparitions I have seen in HM prisons, but I'm going to talk today about a very specific and very strange paranormal happening. Something odd about this case, something very strange, and it's about the acid bath murderer, John George Haigh. Now, John George Haigh was born in 1909. And he was raised in South Yorkshire, I believe. And he had something. He's a serial killer, you see. He had something in common. We've spoken about this, I believe, in my last broadcast, concerning Ian Brady, who was a serial killer and was also a petty thief who was sentenced to imprisonment. Well, so was John George Haigh. He was a petty thief, and he was sentenced to numerous prison offences. And he was also quite an intelligent man, because he was managed to pass himself off for a period of time as a solicitor. He was a confidence trickster to a certain extent, and he got his ideas for murdering people from the stories he heard about a French killer called Sartre. Not John Paul Sartre, of course, no, not that one. That's the existentialist, yeah. You know of John Paul Sartre, yeah. Life is meaningless, and it's meaningless that we are born, and meaningless that we are die. Yeah, that's John Paul Sartre. Not one of my favourite philosophers, by the way. But you've got to read philosophy if you're going to actually take this life seriously. You've got to have a look. Yeah. Now the thing with John George Haigh, John G. Haigh, yeah, John George Haigh, yeah. He decided that he wanted a better lifestyle, and he got this idea about murdering people. And dissolving their bodies in sulfuric acid. He murdered a number of people, the McSwains. He murdered, first of all, Mr. McSwain, who was the son of two wealthy people who owned properties in London. He murdered him, clubbed him to death with a lead bar, bashed him his head in, and dissolved his body in acid. Then he persuaded his parents to visit his property. He said, "Oh, your son's come back from holiday. You know, he's been in Scotland. He's come back, and he'll see you. I'll pick you up." He picked them up and took them to his property, where he murdered both of them as well. murdered them numerous, and once again he dissolved their bodies in acid. The problem that John George Haigh had was that he couldn't dispose of the acid remains, and he believed mistakenly that he could actually escape conviction because there would be no body, no conviction, no murder, except when he dumped the remains of the bodies onto a rubbish heap at the back of the premises he was renting. And the police were searching the area because people were reported missing that had last been seen with him. Then they found part of a human foot, some dentures that were the property of the Mr. McSwain. William Donald McSwain. And he also murdered Donald and Amy McSwain. He murdered Archibald and Rosalie Henderson. He murdered Henrietta Helen Olivia Roberts. And in all, he was convicted of 6 murders. Strange King, he was paid some money by the Daily Mirror, I believe, and the editor of the Daily Mirror published a story about Haigh before or during his trial, in which he referred to John George Haigh as a murderer, and this was held to be contempt of court, and he was sent to prison for 3 months. So the press have been at it for a long time, have they not? Eventually he was discovered, of course, John George Haigh, and he was tried and sentenced to death. And he was sentenced to death by hanging, and he was hung at Wandsworth Prison. Now, here is where the very strange part of this little story comes in, because John George Haigh was attempting to get himself committed to Broadmoor. He said that he was obviously insane because he'd been suffering from nightmares in which he dreamt that people were giving him blood to drink. And it was the jury didn't believe his plea of insanity. They found him guilty of murder, and he was sentenced to death and taken to Wandsworth Prison, where, now this is the strange paranormal, it may not be, but to me it's very strange, because he was hung by Albert Pierrepoint, and executed in accordance with the order of the court. And he was hung on the 6th of August 1949 at 8 a.m. And before he died, one of the final things he said was, "I believe absolutely in reincarnation, and I am going to return and complete my mission." And following that, he was hung by the neck by Albert Pierrepoint at Wandsworth Prison until he was dead. Then his body was interred on consecrated ground within the walls of Wandsworth Jail. As I said, he was hung at 8 a.m. on the 6th of August 1949. John George Haigh. Now, those of you who know a little bit about my life story will know that I was born on the 6th of August 1949 at 8:15 a.m. And the strangest thing is that my aunt, my grandmother's sister, from me being a little child, she always said I was born to hang. Seriously. I mean, I wasn't a violent boy, but I could stand up for myself, and I was always prone to doing that. And she said, this child has been born to hang. My own aunt, imagine that. John George Haigh, 1909, hung on the 6th of August 1949 at Wandsworth Prison, the acid bath murderer. So now it's that time of day, folks, where I am going to read you a poem. I had thought about singing I can sing you a song if you really, really want. What would you like me to sing, yeah? Requests, by the way, and do make comments down below. I like that. Just insult me, do what you want. I'm all right. I'm going to read you a poem anyway. When I fall in love, it may be forever, or I'll never fall in love. Yeah, you can see why I wouldn't fall in love with a voice like that. Singing anyway. I'm going to read you a poem by William Shakespeare here. Sonnet 118. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. Sometime too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dimmed, and every fair from fair sometime declines, by chance or nature's changing course untrimmed. But thy eternal summers shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou owest, nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, when in eternal lines to time thou growest. So long as men can breathe, or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. Well, he was right, wasn't he? Shakespeare was right. His verse lives on 400 years later, and the subject of his verse has gone. Tales from the Jails, John G. Sutton. Thank you very much for watching.